Alright, it's the end of 2024. This is the time of year where we get to wrap things up, look forward to the new year and our bookish times next year. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the most memorable reads from 2024 and some not so great reads as well. Stay tuned, that's coming up here on Drew's Book Reviews. Alright, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that like, comment, subscribe. Join us on the Dragon's Den Discord link below. You know the routine. Anyway, let's talk about it. Let's talk about some of my most memorable reads from 2024. Of course, this is not going to be in any particular order. They're just books that I remember, that I enjoyed, and were probably the most standout books of 2024 for one reason or another. One of the books that I picked up this year was a historical fiction book based on the slave trade of old America, essentially, and that was the Book of Negroes. So this is one of the books that definitely stood out for me as it goes back and tells the story of Aminata Diallo, something that I'm not going to forget. For sure, I went and watched the miniseries on this after I finished reading the book. And this was just an incredible tale of loss, of suffering, of slavery, and of the torment and trials that Aminata went through, being taken as a young child from Africa, sold into slavery, and forced to work in America, and torn from her family in her struggle to survive. And it really was just an incredibly powerful read. I don't read a lot of historical fiction. I tend to be very, very picky when I do pick up a historical fiction because it's not the type of genre I tend to enjoy. Definitely, if you're a follower of this channel, you know I'm more into sci-fi and fantasy. So picking up the Book of Negroes, I'd heard about it, thought that might be interesting, and I picked it up, and I'm really glad that I did, because obviously the slave trade was an absolutely terrible, terrible thing to happen in Western society's history. And I'm so glad I picked this up to learn more about that. And as I understand, this book was taken from and inspired from the experiences of journals left by those who lived in slavery, and overall just a really great book. The Book of Negroes I highly recommend, especially if you're into historical fiction. This is definitely a standout book of 2024 for me. Absolutely loved it. The miniseries was okay, not as good as the book, but adaptations are rarely as good as the source material, I found in my experience anyway. So the Book of Negroes was one of the ones that I picked up this year, and definitely a standout, memorable book of 2024. So the next set of books that are kind of a standout for 2024 is not really a single book, but rather a trilogy of books by Margaret Atwood. That is the MaddAddam trilogy. So we've got Oryx and Crake being the first one in the series, followed up by The Year of the Flood, and then of course we got this one as well, MaddAddam. So what's interesting about this is a post-apocalyptic world based on the results of genetic engineering and of medical firms taking over the world and prescribing, treatments for diseases that they are creating. And it's genetic engineering, it's a post-apocalyptic world where corporations rule the world, which is hauntingly, eerily accurate in so many ways when we think about the power that corporations have within our world and our societies these days, with their money and their influence. And this one, the MaddAddam trilogy, I think is definitely a worthwhile read. And while it does get pretty weird at times, honestly, and kind of like, whoa, what the heck's going on here, and kind of disturbing at times, I think overall it's a really great read. In fact, as I understand, Oryx and Crake specifically, this book actually made a banned book list in the United States for public libraries and schools. So this book is actually on a banned list, and quite frankly, if a book is getting banned, I think that gives you a good enough reason to pick it up and read it. See, I didn't know, I'd already planned to read this before I found out it was banned, but if I'd heard it was banned afterwards, I'd be going to pick that up. I mean, it's called the forbidden fruit effect, essentially, where when something's banned, it just drives that curiosity. Why was it banned? And definitely this book has some adult content in it, which was the rationalization for getting it banned in the first place. But overall, this is a great series. I'd recommend picking up the MaddAddam series, kind of a post-apocalyptic sci-fi type series. So Oryx and Crake, Year of the Flood, and MaddAddam. If you have not checked this out, these are definitely some memorable reads this year for me, and I'm really glad that I picked them up because they have been some great reads all around. Margaret Atwood, of course, is also known for The Handmaid's Tale, which was adapted into a TV series as well. Another classic by Atwood, which I have read. I think I read that in 2023, but anyway, those are some great reads of 2024. So check it out, MaddAddam Trilogy. Next up on memorable reads of 2024. So this is a book that I really wanted to read when I found it, mainly because I work in the industry in which this book talks about, and that is Rogers versus Rogers, the battle for control of Canada's telecom empire. So, you know, I'm transparent about the fact that I work in telecom, in the Canadian telecom industry, and this was a really interesting read for me because of that very reason. It was a very public battle in the courts for control over Rogers and who is ultimately in control of Rogers, with a split in the board of directors. This is public information. It's out there, so I'm not saying anything new that isn't already known. This book kind of goes over what happened, how it happened, how it got to where it was, and what the ultimate end result is. So Rogers versus Rogers, that's all I'm going to say on it because I do work in the industry. I'm not going to say much more, but I will say that this is a memorable read for 2024. If you have an interest in business politics, essentially, this would be a great read. Even if you're not from Canada, this still would be a great read to get an insight into how these big corporate businesses and what can happen when what's going on internally can spread out into the public domain. Very interesting read. Again, I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to get into more details, but it's definitely a memorable read for me, for sure. Rogers versus Rogers. Great read. I enjoyed it personally. Might not be up most people's alley. It is a very niche topic, of course, but definitely relevant for my professional life, so that's why I thought I'd pick that one up. One of the other books that we started is actually a book series where this is one of the first times I've done a buddy read on this series. So what I will say is I'm really glad that we were doing the buddy read on the Discord for the Dune series. Dune has been one of my all-time favorite sci-fi book series of all time, and so to do that buddy read, it really still stands out to me for this year. We're still kind of working on that. It is going into January, so not too late to join in, of course, but the Dune buddy read on the Discord, all the Dune books. Dune by Frank Herbert, one of the greatest sci-fi stories ever told, and some fantastic adaptations lately of that as well, which is just a bonus, of course. This is politics, it's sci-fi, it's philosophy, it's ecology, it's, you know, religious debate, it's economics, it's everything. But definitely I think Frank Herbert was a philosopher at heart, because there's so much philosophy and ideology built into it, some discussion around these ideas and moralities and ethics, and just overall, just Dune really is a fantastic read. Even if you're not a sci-fi fan, it's got something for everyone, I feel, and just fantastic read. So definitely, if you've never read the Dune series, why not pick it up? Highly recommend it. Just a great read all around. Absolutely have been thoroughly enjoying the Dune buddy read. Definitely I like some of the books better than others, but overall it's still a fantastic series and highly recommend it. And the last book on this list, and if anybody is surprised by this, where have you been? Like, seriously, this is the last book on my standout best of 2024 reads that I've really enjoyed. And like I said, if you were surprised by this next title, where you been? I absolutely love Brandon Sanderson's world, his Cosmere, and of course, I'm still reading this. I haven't finished it at the time of filming this video, and probably won't have finished it by the time this video goes out. But Wind and Truth, Book 5 of the Stormlight Archive. Absolutely loving this series. I did a full reread of the Stormlight Archive all years I was listening on Audible leading up to the release of Wind and Truth. Absolutely love it. Still just as good as the first time around I read it, and this is the first time around with Wind and Truth. Of course, I am doing a vlog on this, so stay tuned. I'm going to do a 4-part vlog on Wind and Truth, which I hope to release starting in January. So stay tuned for that, because this is just, it's a fun riot read. Loving it. Absolutely loving it. Fantastic read. So stay tuned for that. And Wind and Truth definitely standing out. So good. Divided into 10 days. Kind of unique. The other Stormlight Archive books have not kind of been divided that way. But this is the final 10 days of the world of Roshar as we know it. and I can't wait to find out how this concludes in an epic, spectacular way. I have no doubt. But definitely this is a standout read for 2024. Loving it. Anyway, so those are my standout reads, so my best reads of 2024. Now let's talk a little bit about what are some disappointing, not so great reads of 2024. So there's really only one book, I guess you could say, that I could say is a really big disappointment reading. And I don't know if disappointment's the right word. I mean, they weren't that great, but it's not like I'm saying they're absolutely terrible, do not read. But it's from my science fiction and fantasy collected works book. Here, I've been reading several stories in this book throughout the year, and these are deemed to be classic stories, but I'm finding for the most part they're actually coming across as a bit dry and boring, to be honest. I've still got a few more left in here, so I'm hoping, like Armageddon 2419 I think is the next one that I'm going to be reading in this book. But many of them have just kind of been boring, to be honest. And then there's the Dunwich Horror, so I'll probably get to those in the new year. But, like, for example, you know, looking backward, 2018-87 was kind of boring, to be honest. Herland was also kind of a boring read. The Lost World, also kind of a boring read, to be honest. I think it has more to do with the style of the writing than anything else. Now, not everything in this book has been boring. Like the H.G. Wells' The War of the World was a really good read. I really actually enjoyed that one. But some of those other ones that I mentioned, like The Lost World and Herland and Looking Backward, these are kind of boring reads. It's just not that interesting. It's dry, and a lot of these are, and I struggle to understand why these stories are classics. So while there are some that I've really enjoyed, there are also some that are really kind of disappointing in the reads. So I've got the two left, the Dunwich Horror, which I think I've actually read in my H.P. Lovecraft book already. And then there's the Armageddon 2419, so we'll see how those two turn out. I'll probably get to those in the new year. But this has kind of been a mixed bag of really good stories and not so great writing, which maybe could have been good stories if the writing had been better. I don't know. Anyway, this one in particular, this is my disappointing read for 2024. But you know what? It happens, and that's okay. Anyway, so there you have it. There are some of the standout books of 2024. So let me know in the comments down below, what were some standout books for you? What did you like? What did you not like? You know, was there any really fantastic read you loved? Was there any book that was just horrible? I'd love to hear from you. And of course, you could join us on the Discord chat there. Comment below. You know the routine. Anyway, there are some of standout books for me for the 2024. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, until next time, keep on reading. Bye.